Hi, it's Andy, and this is our Friday preview, our preview for Sunday's message. In this week's message, I'm going to talk about something that's you might have seen in the news. You might have seen it, race relations. But not just America is dominating the news. We can look at India and China, which combined are 1/3 of the world's population. We can look at North and South Korea, but obviously most of our attention is right here at home. And as I talk about that, I want to talk about some things that we need to do to love. And as I was thinking about that, I was reminded of pain, because that's a part of what we need to overcome, and that's what love can help with. And I was thinking about the pain that took place right here where I am sitting at this moment. It was a pain that I was oblivious to, that everybody was oblivious to while it happened, but 15 to 20 minutes later, I found out about it and shared it the next week, and it has made a difference in people's lives. And that pain I'm talking about related to my friend Io. Now, Io had been here a couple of different times, and the second time that he was here, he was preaching, I believe it was on salt and light. And as he preached about us being salt and light from Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16, I guess, something happened. Something in the midst of his sermon just happened, and I was sitting on the front row watching, and I was engaged with the sermon, and I hadn't seen Io preach much, but he was in rhythm, and then he wasn't, and I didn't know why. Maybe he lost his notes, but he wasn't like sticking right next to the podium or anything to begin with, and all of a sudden he was just off. And so the rest of the sermon continued, and Io finished out the sermon, and then after the sermon was done, I had him stand here at the front of the church and let people come and greet him. And after that took place, we walked home, and Io had something to do that evening. His family, he was about to graduate with his doctorate later that week, and his family was coming into town, and he had some things to do that night. So almost immediately, he already had his backpack. We walked back to the parsonage and said goodbye to Susan. I drove him back to campus, and we had not made it out of Fairfax, and he said, that was different. That was concerning. That was scary even. Well, tell me, what happened? Well, what had happened was a member of our sheriff's department, who happened to be Rick, and a member of our church, was on duty that day and was in full uniform that day. And as Io was preaching, Rick came in the back door of the church, or in the door of the church, I guess. It's the front door, back door, whatever you want to call it. And Io wasn't certain what to make of that. Now, you and I might just dismiss that. In fact, I did. I kind of chuckled. I kind of laughed at the moment, thinking, I know Rick. That's not a big issue. And I know our church. I don't think that's any kind of issue at all. But Io didn't. For Io, the police might show up at your church. The military, not the Nigerian military, but people in military uniforms carrying guns in northern Nigeria, will come into a worship service and nobody walks out. At least those that didn't walk in with guns to do the damage don't walk out. That's the context for Io. And I missed it. Like I said, I laughed. I kind of chuckled under my breath. I kind of dismissed it. But in that moment that Io was preaching, there was concern, there was fear. There was fear maybe for his life, but there was fear about his ambitions. I mean, he was 1 week away from graduating. He'd finished all of his doctoral work. He was 1 week away from that. He hadn't seen his family in a month, and they were going to meet him either that day or the next day, and he might not see them again. And who's going to be left to tell them what happened about this tragedy that took place in this small town of Missouri? The fear was real, and I did not listen. One of the things that we need to do to try to heal and bring reconciliation is to listen. I'll talk more about that on Sunday. But this is what I want us to get out of this preview message today. Io didn't stop. That's love. Io was preaching about being salt and light. And I specifically remember one of the things that he said is wherever you are standing, the Bible says be salt and light, but wherever you are standing, if you are a believer, you are salt. You can share light. You can spread light from wherever you are. And in that moment, when Io did not know what was going to happen next, when he gathered his composure, he brought it. He made sure that we knew that there was a gospel that would save. And what began like a good sermon and him being in rhythm and then getting off kilter a little bit, he got back and he delivered unlike anything I'd heard in quite some time. And I'm not certain I've heard it since. How do you do that? You do that because of love. And something that we need to remember at this time is that love does conquer all. And something that we need to remember at this time is, yes, there will be people that try to explain the past by saying, well, the Bible talks about slavery, and it does. But we can't defend slavery and other racial issues in the Bible when the Bible also says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that's where we're going to be this week. It's not a political message, it's a biblical message. It's a message based upon reconciliation. It's a message based upon Ephesians chapter 2, specifically 11 through 22. Yes, politics are involved, but that's not my care. That's not really my concern for this message. My message is that we try to determine how racial reconciliation can take place, not just between whites and blacks, but between all peoples. Yes, our problem right now is between whites and blacks, but it's been between whites and reds. It's been between whites and yellows. Internment camps, anyone? It's between people. And it's between people and God. And God made a way to reconcile to us. And so we now need to make a way to reconcile with one another.